Commander Dae-sung stood on the observation deck of his flagship, looking out at the stars. He had seen many worlds and many battles in his long life. The Kareth Empire stretched across the galaxy like a great hand, holding everything in its grip. Nothing challenged them. Nothing could challenge them. They were the strongest, the wisest, and the most powerful beings in all the known space. Dae-sung was a tall figure with silver skin that reflected the light of distant stars. His eyes were sharp and cold, the eyes of a warrior who had won every fight he had ever faced. Around him stood his officers, all of them wearing the uniform of the Kareth First Legion. They were the best soldiers in the galaxy, trained for thousands of years in the art of war and command. Their ships were faster than any other ships. Their weapons could destroy entire planets. Their technology was so advanced that other species could barely understand it. The Kareth had ruled for 3,000 years without anyone daring to question their power. They had built great cities on 100 worlds. Their libraries held the secrets of the ancient precursors who had walked the stars before them. The smaller species in the galaxy served them willingly, knowing that resistance was impossible and foolish. The Solari merchants brought them goods from distant places. The Ventai scholars studied under Kareth teachers. Dozens of lesser species worked for the Empire, asking for nothing but the honor of serving the greatest civilization that had ever lived. Dae-sung was proud of this. He believed it was the natural order of things. Strong species ruled, weak species served. This was how the galaxy had always worked, and this was how it would always work. Change was something that happened to other people, in other times. The Kareth were beyond change. They were eternal. "Sir, we are receiving a signal," one of his officers said, breaking into his thoughts. The officer was young, his name was Jin Ho, and he was good at his work. He studied the screen in front of him, his expression becoming confused. "It is unusual, sir." "Very unusual." "What is it?" Dae-sung asked. He did not turn away from the window. Unusual signals were rare things, and he had learned that rare things were usually not important. "There is a vessel approaching from the uncharted region," Jin Ho said. "We have no record of any civilization there, sir. The space was thought to be empty." This caught Dae-sung's attention. He turned from the window and walked to the display screen. On it, he could see a small ship approaching the Kareth patrol line. It was a strange design, nothing like any Kareth vessel or any vessel from the known species. It was smaller than a Kareth fighter, but something about its shape suggested that it had traveled very far through space. "They are broadcasting a message," Jin Ho continued. His fingers moved across the controls. "They say they come from a world called Earth. They identify themselves as human. They wish to make contact with the galactic leaders." For a moment, the observation deck was silent. Human? Earth? These words meant nothing to the Kareth. Dae-sung had studied the records of every species in the galaxy. He knew their names, their technologies, their strengths and weaknesses, but there was no record of humans. There was no record of Earth. "It is a trick," one of the other officers said quickly. "Some lesser species playing a game. We should destroy them." "No," Dae-sung said. He was not sure why he said this. Perhaps he was curious. Perhaps he wanted to see what this strange new vessel could tell them. "Bring them to the neutral station at Kesisthar. I will meet them there. They are no threat to us. They are probably not even soldiers. They may be something interesting to study." The officers bowed and moved to carry out his orders. Jin Ho continued to watch the small ship on the screen as it followed Kareth escort vessels toward the station. There was something strange about the way it moved, something efficient and careful. But Dae-sung did not think about this. He was already thinking of other things, of reports that needed to be read, of the Empire that required his attention. 3 days later, Dae-sung arrived at Kesisthar Station. It was a great structure built in space. a place where different species sometimes met to trade or discuss matters that affected the galaxy. The Kareth had built it long ago, and they maintained it as a place where they could show their power and kindness at the same time. Smaller species were permitted to come there, but always under Kareth watch. The human ship was in the landing bay, looking even smaller and stranger in person than it had looked on the screen. Dae Sung walked toward it with his escort, wondering what he would find. He had conquered worlds. He had commanded fleets of thousands. A small ship and its mysterious crew could not possibly interest him, yet he had come personally. He wondered why. The landing ramp of the human ship lowered slowly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a figure appeared. It was a human male, and Dae Sung's first thought was that they were small, smaller even than the Ventai, and the Ventai were not known for their size. The human had brown skin and black hair and eyes that were dark and clear. He wore a simple uniform of gray and blue. His face showed no fear, no amazement at seeing the great Dae Sung and his escort. "I am Captain Min-Soo," the human said. His voice was calm and even. "I come from Earth, a world in the region you call uncharted space. We have traveled far to meet you, Commander. We hope that you will listen to what we have to say." Dae Sung looked at this small human standing before him. He expected to feel powerful. He expected to feel that this creature was like an insect, something small and insignificant. But there was something in Min-Soo's eyes that made him pause. There was something quiet and certain about the way the human stood, about the way he spoke. It was strange. "Welcome," Dae Sung said, choosing his words carefully. "We are curious to learn about your people. Come, let us talk." As they walked through the station, Dae Sung did not know that this moment would change everything. He did not know that the certainty he felt about the galaxy was about to be shaken. He did not know that the small human walking beside him represented something that had never existed before in the Kareth's long history. He only knew that something new had entered the galaxy, and he was about to discover what it meant. The meeting room on Kessathar Station was large and empty. The Kareth had built it to show their power, with high ceilings and walls that reflected light in a way that made visitors feel small. Dae Sung sat at the head of a long table, and Min-Soo sat across from him. Between them was nothing but space and the weight of two civilizations meeting for the first time. "Tell me about your world," Dae Sung said. "Tell me about your people." Min-Soo did not seem impressed by the room or by Dae Sung's power. He spoke calmly, as if he were talking to an equal, rather than to the greatest military commander in the galaxy. "Earth is our home world. It orbits a yellow star that we call the sun. We are young as civilizations go. Our recorded history goes back only 5,000 years. In that time, we have fought many wars with each other. We have made peace. We have invented things and forgotten them and invented them again. We are not ancient like your people, but we have learned much from our struggles." Dae Sung listened. The human's words were strange. 5,000 years was nothing. The Kareth had been building their civilization before humans even knew how to make fire. And yet, there was something in the way Min-Soo spoke that suggested the human did not feel ashamed of this. He spoke as if 5,000 years of struggle was something to be proud of. "Show me your weapons," Dae Sung said. It was a test. He wanted to see what this small species could make. He expected to see something crude, something that would be destroyed easily by Kareth weapons. Min-Soo stood and walked to a device he had brought with him. It was smaller than a human hand and made of metals that Dae Sung did not recognize. Min-Soo placed it on the table. "This is a plasma disruption device," Min-Soo said. "We have developed 17 different ways to project energy across space. This particular model uses principles that we think you have not yet discovered. It operates on a quantum frequency that makes it very difficult to defend against. But this is not our best weapon. This is just what we brought with us for this meeting." Dae-sung felt something strange happen inside him. For the first time in many years, he felt uncertain. He reached for the device and examined it. It was well made. Better than well made. It was made by someone who understood something about weapons that went beyond simple power. It was made by someone who had thought carefully about how to use force effectively. "You have achieved this in 5,000 years?" Dae-sung asked. "Yes," Min-soo said. "And we did it without help from the precursors. We did it by looking at the problems in front of us and solving them. We did it by failing many times and learning from our failures." Over the next hours, Min-soo showed Dae-sung images and data about human civilization. There were computers that matched Kareth technology. There were ships that could cross space faster than Dae-sung thought was possible. There were designs for cities and weapons and medicines that made sense in ways that surprised him. Everything was functional. Nothing was wasted. Everything was designed to solve a real problem. Dae-sung began to feel something he had not felt in many years. He felt doubt. "We would like to trade with the galaxy," Min-soo said. "We would like to make friends. We would like to learn from your people, and we hope you might learn from us. We come in peace." Dae-sung dismissed the human with courtesy, but with a mind that was now spinning with questions. He made his way back to his ship, and immediately he called Jin-ho. "I want everything," Dae-sung said. "I want to know everything about the humans. I want to know how they made those weapons. I want to know if there are more ships. I want to know if this is a trick or if they are truly telling the truth. Search everything. Question everyone who has been in contact with them." Jin-ho worked for days. What he discovered troubled both of them deeply. There was no record of any deception. The human ship was alone, but it carried proof of a whole civilization behind it. The humans had ships that could cross the distance from Earth to Kareth space, a journey that should have taken years, but that they said took only months. Their technology was real, and it was advanced, possibly as advanced as Kareth technology in some ways. "They said they have been perfecting warfare for thousands of years," Jin-ho said. He was reading from his screen, his young face showing worry. "They have records of weapons development. They have shown us 17 different ways they have learned to use energy. They say that on their world, different groups of humans fought each other, and this fighting made their weapons better and better." Dae-sung realized something that made him uncomfortable. The Kareth had not fought each other in thousands of years. They had conquered other species, but they had not faced real opposition. Their weapons were old designs, refined, but not truly improved. Their thinking had become comfortable and slow. A week later, a human delegation arrived at the Kareth homeworld of Keshvara. It was led by a woman named Ji-won, and she was different from Min-soo in many ways. Where Min-soo was a warrior, Ji-won was a diplomat. She walked into the great hall of the Kareth with confidence that seemed almost impossible for someone so small and from a species the Kareth had never heard of before. "Your civilization is magnificent," Ji-won said. She spoke to Dae-sung and the other Kareth leaders with respect, but she did not speak like someone who was afraid. "We have much to learn from you, but I hope you will consider that we also have things to teach. The galaxy is large, and every species has something unique to offer." Dae-sung watched her speak. He listened to her words. And for the first time in his very long life, he began to understand that the world he thought was permanent and unchanging had already begun to shift. The question now was whether the Kareth would change with it, or whether they would resist and be left behind by history. That night, as he looked out at the stars above Keshvara, Dae-sung realized that the comfort of 3,000 years of dominance had made his people soft. The humans, young and hungry and desperate to prove themselves, had become something that the Kareth no longer were. They had become dangerous, not because they had more weapons or more ships, but because they had something the Kareth had lost. They had the drive to become better. The news spread through the galaxy like a shockwave through space. The humans had been invited to join the Galactic Council, not as observers, not as subjects to be studied, but as full members with voting power equal to the Kareth themselves. In a single decision, Dae-Sung had changed the order of the galaxy that had lasted for 3,000 years. Not everyone accepted this change easily. In the great halls and private meetings of every major species, voices rose in protest and confusion. How could a species that had existed for only a few months in galactic terms suddenly be given equal power to civilizations that had ruled for millennia? It did not make sense. It was dangerous. It was wrong. The Solari merchants, always quick to see where profit might be made, began to shift their trading partnerships toward human companies. The Ventai scholars requested permission to visit Earth and study human science directly. Even some of the smaller species, watching carefully to see which way the wind was blowing, began to wonder if they might benefit from human friendship as well. The careful balance of power that had existed for so long was breaking apart. In the Kareth engineering centers, a young engineer named Hai-Il became obsessed with understanding how the humans had achieved so much in so little time. He spent days studying the designs they had shared, trying to see the logic behind their weapons and ships. What he discovered both amazed and frightened him. The humans did not design things based on tradition or on how things had always been done. They designed things based on solving specific problems, and when their solutions did not work, they tried something different. This was revolutionary thinking for the Kareth, who had based their civilization on the knowledge of the precursors. The precursors had been ancient beings who had walked the stars before anyone else. They had left behind technology and knowledge for others to use and study. For thousands of years, the Kareth had believed that the best way to advance was to understand more deeply the secrets left by the precursors. The idea that you could create something entirely new through trial and error and struggle seemed almost heretical. Hai-Il went to Dae-Sung with his discovery. "Sir," he said, "the humans are not following old knowledge. They are creating new knowledge. They are asking questions that no one has asked before. This is why they have advanced so quickly. They are not limited by what the precursors knew. They are free to imagine anything." Dae-Sung listened carefully. He was beginning to understand that accepting the humans might require the Kareth to change themselves in ways that would be painful and difficult. But he also understood that the alternative was to become irrelevant, like so many ancient species before them. Not all Kareth agreed with this thinking. There was an elder warrior named Kyung-Su, who had fought in wars that Dae-Sung had been too young to remember. Kyung-Su commanded respect from the traditional faction of Kareth society, those who believed that the strength of the Kareth came from their connection to the ancient ways and from their superior power. "This is madness," Kyung-Su declared in a council meeting. His voice was strong, and his words carried the weight of centuries of military victories. "We are giving away our power to creatures who barely understand the basic laws of the galaxy. In 10 years, they will challenge us for control of the Empire. In 20 years, they will rule us. We must stop this now before it is too late." Many Kareth nodded in agreement. The fear that Kyung-Su expressed was the same fear that lived in the hearts of many who had grown comfortable with endless power. Dae-Sung rose to respond, and the council chamber became silent. "I have met the humans," Dae-Sung said. "I have seen their weapons. I have studied their thinking. If we fight them, we may win, but the cost will be great. And even if we defeat them, we will have learned nothing. The humans show us that there are other ways to solve problems, other ways to think about the future. If we refuse to learn, then we are choosing to become weaker, not stronger." The debate raged for hours. In the end, Dae-Sung's authority and his reputation for wisdom won the day. The Kareth would accept the humans as partners, not as enemies. But the voice of Kyung-soo and those who agreed with him did not disappear. It grew quieter, but it grew more determined. Meanwhile, on the neutral station where the human delegation was staying, Ji-won received a message from Min-soo. There was trouble in Kareth space. A patrol vessel had encountered a human trade ship near the border. The Kareth ship had attempted to force the human vessel to stop. The human ship had responded by using one of their energy weapons to disable the Kareth vessel without firing any lethal shots. The Kareth patrol had not been destroyed. No one had been killed. But they had been shown that the humans could defeat them if they wished. This demonstration of human power spread through the Kareth military like poison. Officers who had never questioned Dae-sung's decisions began to whisper doubts. Warriors who had believed the Kareth to be superior began to understand that superiority might be more complicated than they had thought. Dae-sung called Min-soo and asked to speak with him privately. They met in a small room on Keshathar Station, the place where they had first talked. "Your ship should not have used weapons against a Kareth patrol," Dae-sung said. His voice was controlled, but his meaning was clear. This was a test of whether the partnership between humans and Kareth could survive the first real conflict. "Your patrol attempted to capture my vessel and my people," Min-soo replied calmly. "We disabled their ship to protect ourselves. We could have destroyed them. We did not. We could have killed their crew. We did not. This was restraint on our part, Commander. This was us, showing that we do not wish to harm you, only to protect ourselves." Dae-sung understood what Min-soo was saying. The humans were powerful enough to destroy the Kareth if they wished, but they were choosing not to. This choice, this restraint, was actually more frightening to the Kareth than open war would have been. It suggested that the humans knew something about power that the Kareth had forgotten. "What do your people want?" Dae-sung asked. "To live," Min-soo said simply. "To grow, to learn, to be part of something larger than ourselves. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We want to help build something better than what existed before." Dae-sung nodded slowly. He was beginning to see that the humans represented not a threat to be defeated, but a mirror showing the Kareth what they had lost in their long years of dominance. The question now was whether the Kareth could accept what they saw in that mirror, or whether they would shatter it in anger and fear. In the vast research centers that stretched across the Kareth homeworld, Hai-il and a team of human scientists began working together on something that had never been attempted before. They were building a new kind of ship, one that combined Kareth engineering knowledge with human innovative thinking. The Kareth brought their mastery of advanced materials and their ability to build massive structures. The humans brought new ideas about how ships should move through space, about how energy should be used, and about how weapons should be designed. For months, the two teams argued and disagreed. The Kareth wanted to build the ship using methods that had worked for thousands of years. The humans wanted to try new approaches that had never been tested before. Hai-il found himself standing between two ways of thinking, trying to find a path that honored both traditions and innovation. One day, after weeks of careful work, the first test was successful. The ship moved through space with an efficiency that shocked both teams. It was faster than the fastest Kareth vessel. It used less energy than even the human designers had expected. When Dae-sung came to see the results, he stood in silence for a long time. "What we have built here is the future," he said finally. "This is what becomes possible when we stop believing that we already know everything." News of the success spread quickly. Within weeks, every major trading company in the galaxy wanted to know if they could obtain one of the new ships. The Solari merchants, who had always been quick to shift their allegiances, now openly declared that they would trade preferentially with the human Kareth alliance. Contracts worth trillions of credits were signed. New stations were built to support the construction of more ships. Entire industries began to revolve around the partnership. But not everyone in the galaxy was happy with this new development. The Zilthek Dominion, a powerful civilization that had always competed with the Kareth for influence, watched with growing anger as the Human-Kareth alliance became stronger and more successful. The Zilthek had never ruled as completely as the Kareth, but they had held significant power in the outer regions of the galaxy. Now that power seemed to be slipping away. The Grand Steward of the Zilthek was a formidable leader named Su Jin. She had ruled her people for nearly 200 years, and she had never accepted that the Kareth were superior to her own civilization. She saw the rise of humanity as a threat, not just to Kareth dominance, but to the entire balance of power that had allowed the Zilthek to maintain their independence. Su Jin sent a message to the Galactic Council. The message was a demand disguised as a warning. Either the humans were expelled from the council immediately, or the Zilthek would consider all humans and all Kareth allies to be legitimate military targets. It was a blunt threat, and it made clear that Su Jin was willing to go to war over this issue. The council chambers fell silent when Jiwan read the message aloud. The threat was serious, and everyone knew it. The Zilthek had a powerful military. If they began attacking human and Kareth ships, it could quickly spiral into a full-scale war that would devastate the entire galaxy. But Jiwan did not look frightened. She looked thoughtful, as if she had already considered this possibility and already prepared for it. She turned to face Su Jin through the communication system that connected the council chambers. "Grand Steward," Jiwan said, "we request the opportunity to meet with you in person. We request the opportunity to address your concerns in front of the full council. We believe that when all the facts are presented, you will see that your fears are unfounded." This was a bold move, and everyone knew it. Jiwan was essentially challenging Su Jin to justify her demands through reason and argument rather than through threat and force. It was a very human way of approaching conflict, and many of the alien species in the council were not sure it would work. Su Jin accepted the challenge. She was confident that the Zilthek's ancient claims to territory and resources were stronger than anything the humans could argue. She did not believe in the power of words and facts when military force could achieve her goals, but she accepted anyway, perhaps underestimating the humans' ability to prepare. At the appointed time, Su Jin arrived at the Galactic Council with a delegation of her finest strategists and historians. They came with documents and records stretching back thousands of years, all of them claiming Zilthek rights to regions of space that the humans and Kareth were beginning to use. Jiwan was ready. The humans had spent weeks preparing for this meeting. They had created a comprehensive archive of every treaty, every agreement, and every historical document related to the regions in question. More importantly, they had organized this information in a way that made clear exactly where the Zilthek claims were valid and where they were not. As Jiwan presented her evidence, the room became increasingly quiet. Document after document contradicted the Zilthek's position. In some cases, the Zilthek had simply misinterpreted old treaties. In other cases, they had ignored agreements that had been made centuries before. But in case after case, the humans showed that the Kareth and human use of these regions was legal and justified. Su Jin's face grew darker and darker as the presentation continued. She was not accustomed to being challenged, and she was certainly not accustomed to being proven wrong in front of the entire galaxy. When Jiwan finally finished, the council chamber erupted in discussion. The Zilthek's threats had been shown to be without legal foundation. Their demands were revealed as acts of aggression rather than acts of justice. Su Jin rose from her seat, her body trembling with anger and humiliation. "This is not finished," she said. "The Zilthek will not forget this insult. We will not forget that humans who have existed for mere moments have dared to challenge our authority." But even as she spoke, everyone in the council knew that something had changed. The humans had defeated the Zilthek not with weapons, but with knowledge. They had shown that in the new galaxy, power came not just from military strength, but from the ability to think clearly, to prepare carefully, and to present facts that could not be denied. Minsu watched from the side of the council chamber as Su Jin and her delegation left in anger. He turned to Daesung and smiled slightly. "The age of simple power is ending," Minsu said. "The galaxy is becoming more complicated. Those who can adapt will survive. Those who cannot will become irrelevant." Daesung nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand that the humans did not just bring new weapons and new technology to the galaxy. They brought a new way of thinking about what power really meant. And this new way of thinking was perhaps the most powerful thing of all. The rebellion began in the darkness of the Kareth military barracks, in the hearts of those who could not accept that their civilization's time of unchallenged dominance was ending. Kyung-Soo had spent months planning, gathering supporters, and preparing for this moment. He had connections that ran deep through the Kareth command structure, warriors who shared his belief that accepting the humans was a betrayal of everything the Kareth stood for. On a night when Daesung was alone in his chambers on Keshvara, the rebellion struck. Military units loyal to Kyung-Soo surrounded the command center. Soldiers who had served under Daesung for decades suddenly revealed that they had been waiting for this moment. In the confusion and violence, Kyung-Soo's forces pushed toward the inner chambers where Daesung was located. The rebellion was swift and brutal, and for a few hours it seemed that it might actually succeed in removing Daesung from power and restoring the old way of doing things. But Daesung had prepared for this possibility. He had allies he could call on, and more importantly, he had Minsu. When the rebellion was at its peak, when Kyung-Soo's forces seemed unstoppable, a human military vessel suddenly appeared in the sky above the Kareth command center. Captain Minsu and a small team of elite human soldiers descended directly into the center of the fighting. They came with weapons drawn, and they came with the kind of tactical precision that only soldiers trained for thousands of years in real combat could bring to bear. What happened next shocked everyone who witnessed it. Minsu and his team did not come to destroy Kyung-Soo's forces. They came to save them from themselves. The human soldiers moved with incredible speed and skill, disabling weapons and subduing enemies without killing them. They protected Daesung and pushed back the rebellion, but they did it in a way that allowed Kyung-Soo's soldiers to understand that they had been defeated without needing to die for their cause. When the fighting was over, Kyung-Soo himself was captured. He stood before Daesung with his uniform torn and his face covered with the dust of defeat. For the first time in his long life, the old warrior had tasted real defeat, and the taste of it was bitter. "You will execute me," Kyung-Soo said. It was not a question. It was what he expected, what any Kareth leader would have done in the old times. But Daesung looked at the old warrior and saw not an enemy, but a part of his own past. He saw the strength and the courage that had made the Kareth great. He also saw the rigidity and the fear of change that was slowly destroying them. "No," Daesung said. "I am offering you a choice. You can accept that the galaxy has changed and become part of the new order. Or you can die defending a past that is already gone." This was the moment when everything could have turned toward violence and revenge. But it did not. Kyung-Soo, looking at Minsu and at the human soldiers who had defeated him so completely and so efficiently, finally understood something. He understood that the Kareth's time of absolute dominance was truly over. More importantly, he understood that this did not have to be a disaster. It could be an opportunity. "I accept," Kyung-Soo said simply. The rebellion was over, but its effects would be felt for a long time. The message it sent throughout the Kareth civilization was powerful. The humans had proven that they would stand by their partners, not out of obligation but out of genuine commitment. They had proven that they were willing to fight and willing to risk their soldiers' lives to defend what they believed in. And most importantly, they had proven that they had learned something about mercy and about second chances that many of the older civilizations had forgotten. In the days following the rebellion, something remarkable happened. Young Kareth soldiers who had been uncertain about the human alliance suddenly became enthusiastic supporters. Officers who had been privately skeptical of Dae Sung's decisions began to openly support his policies. The very act of the humans defending the Kareth had created a bond that military strength alone could never have created. Min-Su visited Dae Sung in his private chambers a few days after the rebellion had been suppressed. The two leaders, one ancient and one young, one Kareth and one human, stood together looking out at the stars. "You could have asked for more," Dae Sung said. "You could have demanded control of Kareth military operations or resources or anything you wanted. We would have had to grant it." "I did not come to the galaxy to rule it," Min-Su said. "I came to find partners, to find beings who could help us understand what it means to be truly great. Military victory is easy. Building something that will last, that is difficult. That requires partners who believe in what you are trying to build." Dae Sung smiled. It was a gesture that came slowly to his face, but when it came, it was genuine. "The humans are strange," he said. "You think in ways that the Kareth have forgotten how to think, but I am beginning to understand that strange is not always bad. Strange can be better." In the months that followed, the rebellion led to a surprising result. Many of the traditional Kareth who had supported Kyung-Su were assigned to work directly with human scientists and military strategists. In close contact with humans every day, they began to understand that the future did not mean abandoning Kareth strength and Kareth traditions. It meant evolving those traditions and making them relevant to a changing galaxy. Hae-Il, the young Kareth engineer, worked closely with a human named Jiho, who was one of the leading human scientists. Together, they designed systems that combined Kareth precision with human creativity. The ships they built became legendary throughout the galaxy. The weapons they designed were so effective that no other civilization dared to challenge the human-Kareth alliance. But more important than the weapons was the change in thinking. The Kareth began to understand that innovation was not weakness, that change was not failure, and that the future belonged to those who could adapt and grow. And the humans understood that ancient wisdom and careful planning had value, that tradition could be a strength if it was not allowed to become a prison. The galaxy was changing, not through conquest or force, but through the slow, powerful process of two civilizations learning to respect each other and to work together toward a common goal. And this change, though it had begun with fear and uncertainty, was slowly becoming something beautiful.